Maniv's set the stage, and we're here to talk about what exactly Blockstack is and what it can provide to developers. So Blockstack is a new internet for decentralized applications. Another way to look at it is it's a way for users to own their identity and own their data. And another way to frame this is all the different phrasings of the same thing, is that it's a way for developers to build products that are better for consumers. There are products that we use today that serve us in some capacity, but what if we could empower both users and developers and allow them to come together in a way that's good for both of them, removing the middlemen, removing the monopolies? Next thing I'm going to go into is decentralized applications the Blockstack way. The way I like to think about how to build a decentralized application is with 3 steps. 1, you choose a market. 2, you define a protocol. And 3, you build out the reference implementation. So, as an example, you want to look for a market where there is a strong reason to disrupt it. There's data lock-in, there's a high percentage of fees, and there's censorship that's rampant across the platform. A platform that is ripe for disruption is a perfect application to build in a decentralized way. So the goal here really is to take something where there are very strong private network effects. There's a very strong monopoly player, for example, Facebook, Google, Amazon. And you take that and you build out an application where you can take those strong private network effects and convert them into public network effects. So a great example of this is email, where email, it's a system where there are public network effects. But this system is completely different from a private messaging network. There were private electronic messaging networks before, but email is the one that actually succeeded, partly because it was open. So once you have a network that's completely open, the public network effects will inevitably outcompete the private network effects. It's just extremely difficult to get it going. And once the private network effects are already really strong, it's hard to break. So you look at email, that's a great example. Another one is BitTorrent, where there are many, many different clients, many different pieces of software. They're all converging around this same protocol and this same network. And a third notable one is Bitcoin, where Bitcoin is a completely open, decentralized, global, neutral playing field for store value and payments. And this is a system, these are the kinds of systems that you can look to for inspiration when you go and you build your decentralized application. So pick a market that's asking to be disrupted, and go ahead and build that decentralized application. So an example that we can look to is home sharing. We have companies like Airbnb and HomeAway, and they are closed networks. They are data silos. You can't get your data out, right? You've been using Airbnb, you've built up reputation, you have a verified identity, but you can't use that anywhere else. That's locked into Airbnb. If you go to use HomeAway, if you go to use Vrbo, that data is not useful. You have to build that up all over again. You have to build your reputation all up over again. You have that reputation that you've built up on Uber and on Lyft. They don't travel with you. This data isn't really yours. It is under the control of these companies, and they are milking it and just pulling the money out of you by virtue of the fact that they have this data lock-in. So you can take something like this, a hierarchical system for home sharing, where all of these homes are connected directly into, for example, Airbnb HQ, or the central application that you use to use Airbnb. And you can take this and flip it on its head and build an application protocol for which there are many different clients that can connect to the network. When you have something like this, it starts to look more like email. It starts to look more like BitTorrent and Bitcoin. What if we could take that model for email and BitTorrent and Bitcoin and apply it to every single application, to home sharing, to ride sharing, to social networking, where you can imagine things like decentralized Facebook, decentralized Twitter, and decentralized Medium. You control your data, and it becomes a platform for innovation. So if Twitter doesn't have a feature, isn't implementing a feature that you really want, maybe the decentralized Twitter, where anyone can build on top of it, will allow 1,000 flowers to bloom, and many, many different businesses will be able to be built on top. You'll have 10 different analytics applications. You'll have 10 different types of feeds. You'll have so many different developers that are building competing clients on this decentralized Twitter protocol, and that provides a much better consumer experience, less ads, less transaction fees from marketplaces, a much, much better overall experience with greater privacy and greater security. And the really exciting thing is that on Blockstack today, we're seeing a lot of these markets being attacked and dismantled. We're seeing some incredible applications like Casa that's taking a stab at disrupting the home sharing market. We have Ongaku Ryoho, which is a decentralized iTunes. We have OpenBazaar, essentially a decentralized eBay. Afia, allowing you to control and own your healthcare data and provision it to healthcare providers. And Guild, the equivalent of a decentralized Medium. All of these are some incredible applications that are being built on top of Blockstack, and there are hundreds more coming. It just is up to you to decide what you want to build and what experience that you want to bring to consumers. The next thing I'm going to go into is what I believe are a few of the phases that we're going through with building this new internet, what we're actually seeing. And some of this has already passed, some of this, the entire community has been working on, and some of this is yet to come. So with phase 2 of building the new internet, phase 1 of building the new internet, we can see that there is an initial hard problem that we have to address, and that is the problem of discovering and securely connecting with apps and people. This has a somewhat usable and workable version in the existing internet. We have the domain name system, we have the certificate authority system, we have profiles on applications like Facebook. We have systems for identifying and connecting to applications and people. Of course, they are very centralized, and there's a lot of security holes, a lot of things that could go wrong. So the goal here is to provide something that is much more secure and actually works in a way where there is no single central provider. There's no Facebook that has to vouch for you when you go to log into an application. There's no VeriSign that has to vouch for a particular website when you connect to it. So our answer to this, what we decided to build out, were two key components. And one was the blockchain name system, and the other is blockchain IDs. And the blockchain name system is built to address the problem of tying keys to names to routing information. It's a way, you can think of this as the secure backbone for a scalable and secure system for decentralized applications. And this is a simple diagram that shows how the transactions that are actually being, how Blockstack actually builds up the name database through embedding transactions in the Bitcoin blockchain or in any other blockchain. And blockchain IDs provide additional context for particular identities that have been registered in namespaces on Blockstack. So if you have an identity for a person, you have an identity for a person, you have identity for applications, you have identities for devices. These things can get registered for just about anything that you can imagine. And there's the base layer that provides the key to name to routing information. And then above that, there's additional context around profiles. So you can have verifications around who a person is. And then when you go to log into an application and when you connect and communicate with someone else, you can know that you're communicating with the right person. So that was phase one. Phase two is defined by this, that the new internet needs a way for developers to build decentralized applications. And the answer to that is to build a decentralized application API. So right now what we're providing is APIs for identity, storage, and payments. So if you want to go and build an application, you don't have to build out your own identity system. And you don't have to utilize or rely upon a centralized provider like Facebook for authentication or a centralized API backend as a service like Firebase. Instead, it's a completely decentralized system where you don't even have to worry about running the infrastructure, running the servers, running the databases. The same thing, not just identity, but for storage, right? The data can be stored with your individual users. So instead of utilizing Firebase, right, or instead of utilizing your own API that your single-page web application connects to, instead, every single user has the equivalent of their own Firebase. Every single user has their own identity that they bring with them. Every single user has their own API for storing data. Now, this is truly, truly revolutionary. If you think about it, in the traditional internet, users revolve around applications because applications provide their API and all the end clients connect to that API, and they're all revolving around that.
Can you repeat that?
In the new internet, instead of applications being at the center and users revolving around applications, users are at the center. Because you are a user and you have your own personal data API, and you can use 5 different applications. And those 5 different applications all connect to your API. That's the goal here. So identity and storage, and of course, the payments that we all know and love with Bitcoin and Ethereum and all of the other cryptocurrencies that are out there. So these things are 3 user-controlled resources that your application can plug into, and you don't have to worry about building these out. And this is a simple diagram that shows how exactly this works. At the bottom, you have the blockchain and the peer-to-peer network, which is the secure backbone. The blockchain name system, which is a layer on top that maps keys to names to routing information. And then services that utilize everything below, so identity, storage, and payments. And then Blockstack applications just use the Blockstack API. This can be in Blockstack.js or any other library, and utilize this to build out their application. Note that with these services provided, there's a lot less work that you actually have to do, a lot less that you actually have to build out as a developer, because all of this has already been provided to you. That's really, really important. It would be a really strange thing for us to see many, many different applications all rebuilding the same thing when they're going out to build a decentralized application. It'd be way too much reuse of work, way too much work being done over and over again, and not enough reuse of work. So this brings us to the point at which we can build applications much, much more quickly. And you can go online and you can see the documentation for example, Blockstack.js, which is one of the many libraries that you can use. And you can use calls like redirecting the user to sign in, handling the pending sign-in, loading the user data, checking if the user signed in, signing the user out, etc. And then when it comes to storage, you have a very simple interface where you can get a file from the user and you can put a file with the user. That's a pretty incredible experience. Your application can have 0 data that you need to manage. You can just publish your app, put out the JavaScript and HTML and CSS, and then sit back. All you have to do is provide software updates. You don't have to worry about databases or servers. Everything runs on the user's computer. All the data is with the user. So that brings us to phase 3. And this is extremely important. This is the idea that applications that are decentralized need business models that are native to these applications. We have certain business models that work with certain types of apps and certain ones that don't. And with the internet, when the internet came out, it was very clear that a lot of the traditional media business models wouldn't work, and new ones had to be developed. The same thing applies here. With the decentralized internet, some business models just won't be viable, and some business models will emerge that work for the first time ever. A big part of that, what we're doing, is we're introducing the block stack token. So the goal here is to really jumpstart the entire ecosystem and allow these decentralized networks to compete with the centralized networks, the Facebooks, the Googles, and the Amazons of the world. And the block stack token is a key component to that. And the next thing that I'm going to go into is how that block stack token actually helps catalyze this decentralized network, helps us bootstrap a decentralized network to allow it to bring it to the next level. And really the basics that you have to know are that it's a separate blockchain. It utilizes proof of burn mining on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. So if you burn Bitcoin, then tokens will be released to the address that you burned it from. So it's similar to doing proof of work, but in the case of burning Bitcoins instead. And then a percentage of the rewards will go to app developers. So majority of the rewards will go to those who burn, and then a percentage will go to the app developers. The next thing that we can go into is the actual decentralized app business models. So there's three that I want to highlight here today. And the first one is token mining rewards for the developers of popular applications. So the way this works is that a percentage of the mining rewards will be distributed amongst applications based on their usage. So more popular applications will get a higher percentage of rewards, and all applications will be able to share in the rewards. The goal here is to incentivize truly useful applications, so that the applications that are more successful, that have more users using them every single day, are the ones that will get rewards and be able to help them fund the project. The second one is for payments for name registrations in an app-specific namespace to go to the namespace creators. So on Blockstack, you have namespaces. There's a namespace for user identities called .id. There are namespaces for applications like .app. New namespaces are coming soon for devices, Internet of Things devices, for licenses, et cetera, et cetera. You as a developer, you can create a namespace for whatever you want. If you're building an application, you can create a namespace. Let's say you're creating a decentralized Twitter. You can create a namespace called .microblog and then have your users register names on name.microblog. And those name registration fees will get paid to you as the namespace creator. This is one particular model that you can choose to use for your application. You can use the first model, you can use the second model. It's completely up to you how you want to do. Maybe you don't want to require that users register names in your namespace. Maybe you do. Depends on the exact application that you're building, and that's up to you to decide. And this is essentially how it works. So every user that's on your namespace that's going to register for this, let's say, .microblog application will register for a name. They will pay a certain amount of tokens, and the tokens will go to you as the namespace creator and any of your other collaborators who helped you build that namespace. That's the key here. And then the third one that I'd like to highlight is app-specific tokens. So for certain applications, this makes a lot of sense. If you're an application where you want to, for example, have a license to use your application, this is a perfect model. You can require a particular token in order to use your application, and this will incentivize users to participate in the network. It will allow for allocating the resources, and it's actually a way to build out a system that has some sort of licensing and fee system built in, right? So you can imagine a bunch of different users who are all connecting on this network, And each individual client is choosing to only connect with the other clients if they detect that that user has this token as a license that they have present on that particular address. So every user is enforcing the custody for every other user. And this is a way to actually allow for bootstrapping a network and incentivizing the development of the network. So the reason why this is important is that today, private applications have the bulk of the value capture. Facebook, Google, and Amazon represent an enormous percentage of the pie on the internet today, a shockingly large percentage. And this needs to change. We need to be able to disrupt this. But traditionally, open source software and open networks, there hasn't been value capture. There hasn't been money there. There just hasn't been a reason for developers to go and contribute and be able to spend an enormous amount of their sweat to build out these systems. It's why you look at open source software and it generally has a worse experience. It generally has worse design. It generally is not as reliable. That's because the money's not there. So in order for us to change this, we need to shift the equation. We need to move money into the direction of the open networks. If this picture always looks like this, then the decentralized internet will never happen. So that's why incentives and funding models are so important. The goal is to shift it in this direction. And I really believe that this is going to be inevitable. This is going to happen because we are seeing things emerge where it only makes sense. It only provides a system that is actually much more efficient. The cat is already out of the bag. So what we're going to see here is we're going to see networks opening up. We're going to see networks with their own tokens. We're going to see networks with their own models for registering licenses and for payments going out to the developers. We're going to see people forking. We're going to see lots and lots of competing platforms. But we're going to see an immense proliferation in the decentralized app business model space. And over time, the open networks will outcompete the private networks. The reason for that is because when you have many, many different players working together, they will always be able to outcompete a single player on their own. This is why there's a saying that says, the best people that you could possibly hire, the majority of them are always not working for you, by definition. Because you represent a very small portion of the pie. So the goal here is to help usher in this age much more quickly and to build this future together. The future is bright for decentralized applications, and we ask you to be a part of it. Thank you.